copulation by use of force or injury. Victim 7, count 14, violation of Penal Code Section 68, asking or receiving a bribe, and count 15, assault by a police officer. These alleged acts occurred while the defendant was on duty in his supervisorial role with the Stockton Police Department. The defendant has been remanded to custody and returns to court this Friday, November 18th for bail. He will remain in custody at this time as there is a no bail hold on him. As you know, my time in the District Attorney's Office is coming to an end, but in my 35 years in this office, these are some of the most despicable allegations I have encountered against a police officer. I wholeheartedly commend the victims who came forward to share their trauma, as without them, this investigation would not have occurred. It took courage and strength to report the actions against them, especially in light of the defendant's profession. Because after all, who were they going to report it to but the same agency that hired and employed the man who committed these crimes? We understand the horrific nature of these alleged crimes. If you or someone you know believes to have been a victim of the defendant or any member of law enforcement, please contact directly the District Attorney's Office Public Integrity Unit. I want to thank Assistant District Attorney Christine Reed, Supervising District Attorney Robert Martinelli, and Deputy District Attorney Jennifer Crampton, the Bureau of Investigation, and the Stockton Police Department for working through this investigation. This investigation into Defendant Blaud's alleged acts is ongoing. We are not done. On Tuesday, November 8th, Stockton Police Officer Nye Tran was taken into custody by Stockton Police Department before being turned over to the San Joaquin County District Attorney's investigation team. He is charged with count 1, violation of Penal Code Section 368, theft from an elder or dependent adult, exceeding $950. Count 2, 487, violation of Penal Code Section 487, grand theft. Count 3, violation of Penal Code Section 470, forgery. Count 4, violation of Penal Code Section 530.5A, identity theft. Count 5, 484, use of a forged credit card. Count 6, forgery. Count 7, forgery. My office's Bureau of Investigation received a tip on the elder fraud line from the state-appointed conservator of this victim. The conservator noticed checks written to the defendant in large sums of money, in addition to frequent credit card charges totaling nearly $50,000. The victim is in his early 80s and appears to suffer from some form of a handicap and has had state court-appointed conservatorship. The defendant returns to court on December 13th at 9:30 a.m. and remains out of custody. At this time, my office has opened up the elder fraud tip line in the event new victims come forward. Resources, tip lines, and complaints for both defendants can be found on our website. We're asking everybody in the community, whether it was recent or from a long time ago, if you've had any encounter with these two defendants, please report to the Stockton Police Department or the District Attorney's Office what those contacts were and allow us an opportunity to investigate. Like you, I'm at a loss. Like you, I'm disappointed. The two defendants preyed upon members of our community under the color of authority. Did it while wearing the badge, while wearing the uniform, with a gun strapped to their waist, with a radio blaring, driving a black and a white car that says here to serve and protect. That's how and when and the tools they used to commit this crime. It is unfathomable to me, as a daughter of a Stockton police officer, that these two put on a uniform and took advantage of their position and of their power to inflict harm to those who are most vulnerable. Police officers are meant to be guardians of the community, and allegations against two members of law enforcement tarnish the reputation of the profession. I have an obligation to protect the communities and these victims from those who have harmed them, regardless of their profession. Justice must be equitable in order to maintain the public's trust. I have the privilege every day of seeing the good work that law enforcement does. But when you see this, you know you have to act swift, and you have to take actions to ensure that those who have committed this harm never are capable of doing it again, and they're fully held accountable for their actions and for breaking the trust and the bond they have with this community, as to these are people we turn to when we need help. And when they're not there, or even worse, they're there to cause harm, then the system has collapsed. So we must hold each and every one of us to the highest standard. And like I said, each and every day I have the privilege of seeing law enforcement at that level, achieving success, doing thorough investigations, protecting people's civil rights, ensuring that justice is swift and fair. But when it's not, it takes all of us in this community to move to make sure it does not and will not ever happen again. At this time, I'll take a few questions.
A few clarifying questions.
Sure.
Can you say, is it blowed, loud,
It's
lead,
blowed.
blowed? And then in terms of his total counts, how many total counts is he facing right now?
15 counts, 14 felonies, 1 misdemeanor.
Thank you. And in the complaint, I saw 8 different complaint victims, 5 victims of assault, 2 of bribery, and 1 of prostitution. In here, I only heard you name 7. Is it 8 or 7? I just want to over-clarify.
Let's see, I might have.
I want to make sure my breakdown on that is also correct with the 5 assault, 2 bribe, 1
7.
prostitution.
7.
7 total?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there was at one point an 8th person listed in that complaint. Was that a double from one of those other?
I believe so.
Okay, so is it then 5 assault victims and 2 bribery? Is the prostitution linked to one of those? I just want to make sure we have.
Count 1's an assault with victim 1. Count 2 is assault by a public officer, victim 1. We'll just go through them. Count 3 is assault by a public officer, victim 1. Count 4 is oral caught by use of force. And that is, double check, make sure.
Yeah,
victim
I had
2.
count 15 named
Okay.
confidential, victim 8 is what I had in my notes from the complaint.
Let me double check for you.
I'm sorry for the back and forth. I just want to make sure we get it right.
I'll circle back and get you the answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Are
cool.
the victims men and women, or just women? Can you tell us?
Both.
Per blow?
Both.
Do you have a timeline, just how many years this stretched over?
We're just looking at the past 12 months, but we're going to be opening an investigation from the date of his employment
So
to present.
just to fully clarify, those victims are from the last 12 months alone?
They're from the last approximately 12 to 24 months.
How long have you been investigating, and was it undercover kind of thing, or did any crimes occur while you're investigating?
Stockton Police Department investigated this individual, and at some course during the investigation reached out to my office for assistance, and at that point Bureau of Investigation provided assistance, and we had a deputy district attorney, a supervising attorney, and an assistant district attorney all working on this case to ensure the safety and well-being.
Is an internal affairs investigation at PD ongoing, or has it been completed?
You would have to ask them.
For the Nitran case, I know one of the victims listed was Ken Urabe. Was he the victim in all of the different checks that had been written, or just the credit card situation?
We're going to keep the victim in yes,
So there was only, so Nitran had one victim, it was Ken Urabe in all of this.
to our knowledge, yes.
Was Nitran was he monitoring his conservatorship?
No. The state conservatorship is, and the county conservatorship department oversees certain elders in our community that maybe don't have family or don't have anybody to assist them with day-to-day operations, including their economic resources. So they actually have conservatorship, which allows them to be involved in their economic decisions as well as their medical decisions in some cases, depending on what the court rules is the appropriate conservatorship. In this case, they had conservatorship over him to monitor his resources to make sure things like this didn't occur. It was that organization and agency that tipped us off that there were checks and credit card charges that were not lining up.
Did Nitran know the victim personally?
No, it was a call for services.
For
And
the,
so-
What does that mean?
Law enforcement responded for a call for services to the residents.
for the alleged victims in the Blood case, I know there's quite a few, but could you give us a touchstone for how he might have known or had a connection to those victims?
Probably the best way to describe it is that he was engaging in his job as an officer in order to pull people over for tickets, cite and release, and potential arrest. And that's how he became in contact with many of them.
Okay, so is the kind of subtext there that he was kind of out looking for those folks and didn't know them personally?
I would say that in this case, the defendant was looking for particularly vulnerable people, and because of his position of authority, the fact that he was in a position of either giving you a ticket or not, or citing and releasing you, or arresting you, all of those gave rise to a position of authority, and put a tremendous amount of duress and stress on our vulnerable victims in order to ascertain what he was seeking.
Gotcha. Thank you.
As you mentioned earlier, I know that soon you'll be on your way out as district attorney, but you've been serving in this role for many years. At this point, what would you say the state of the Stockton Police Department is, and on the same token, community trust in that department?
Well, these cases hurt our credibility. It hurts law enforcement's credibility because these are people that we entrusted to go in and do a job. And so good officers dislike bad officers more than anybody because they do hurt the good work that they're doing, and we're working hard to build that trust. But when you have a pattern of behavior and pattern of policies and practices that allows a defendant to commit the amount of crimes that Blood committed and not be caught or apprehended sooner, then we need to look at our policies and practices and determine if we're really providing every tool and resource in order to protect the community from this rogue person. So I think it's important that we take additional steps. And I don't think it's sufficient to say that we're going to investigate ourselves. I think Stockton Police Department needs to bring in a third party to do an investigation as to their policies and practices.
Do you think that's realistic?
I think it is. We'll be reaching out to different agencies to provide oversight, because you cannot build trust by saying the same agency that employed this person and allowed all of these crimes to occur over an extended period of time is now going to handle the investigation. That just doesn't build trust. So we need to build that trust back up, and we will. We'll build it back up.
You don't think the union's gonna significantly push back on that concept?
It would be unfortunate because they shouldn't be defending an individual who has been charged, two individuals who have been charged with these kind of crimes. I would be shocked to think any union would stand behind either one of these and fight for them.
Do we know where?
Speaking with the attorney on the civil side of this case for the victims, he was telling me that, ask the DA why it took so long to file these charges. They had all this information months and months ago. Why did it take so long?
That's a false statement. The civil attorney doesn't really know what he's talking about, so somebody ought to teach him a little bit about the law. So what it is that the Stockton Police Department did the investigation, and during the course of it, when it was about 2/3 of the way done, they reached out to my office. At that point, we became engaged in providing services through Bureau of Investigation and a support from a district attorney's office. At that point, we have to wait till all the reports come forward. Once all the reports come forward, we had it for less than 2 weeks and charged it. So my responsibility is that. A lot of people confuse what the district attorney does. I don't arrest, I don't set bail, and I don't release people from the jail. I often get asked and are accused of doing that, but we simply don't do that. They do the investigation, turn it over to us, and then we continue on with it. And in this case, about 2/3 of the way into it, they reached out to us and let us know that this was an ongoing investigation and that they would be looking for us for assistance and guidance. And we provided that. And after we ascertained all of the documentation, and as you can imagine, these investigations, in the world, you're going to have to realize now we need technology much more than we ever did before. So we have to subpoena on any case. So let's just make this any case, not specific to this. You have to get cell phones, you have to get geofencing, you have to get text messaging. You're looking at 3 to 6 months turnaround from the big tech companies, if they're in the mood to give them to you that fast. So it's a 3 to 6 months just to get that information back. So it takes time to build these cases because jurors, we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the crime occurred, and they want the technology. They want to see, was it on their cell phone? Where's the GPS? Do we have trackers? Where were they? They want all of that evidence. And so that takes time to build on every single case we have, not just this one, every case we have. So it's going to take more time, even though people think technology has made things faster. it actually has slowed things down a bit in the ability for us to ascertain that evidence.
You
Well,
mentioned
Mr.
Blood
Blood,
went for a particularly vulnerable set of people within his victims. Is there anything demographically that, of a breakdown of those victims? Were they from the same demographic, age range, race range, anything like that?
No,
For Mr. Blood, do we know if he's worked as an officer in previous departments and if there are investigations in those other departments, et cetera?
I don't know where he worked prior to 2008. They're looking into that. He's been with the Stockton Police Department since 2008. So we'll go all the way back, and that's what today's about. Is it's going to be easy to to talk about some things, but what's important is that we get this messaging out to potential victims that are out there. We don't know. There might be no more people coming forward, or there might be others. So we want to make sure that anybody that's been a victim of either one of these defendants or has had some sort of problem with any law enforcement officer to report it immediately. Because like I said, good officers are working on these cases to rid any department of bad officers. We simply do not want them.
In the
So
Blow
what do you
case-
have to say about how you're saying if there's potential victims to come forward, but what do you have to say to those victims if there are some that don't feel like they can come to police because of what's going on? Just as you said earlier, how do you go to a police that just did something by another police officer?
We hear them, and we see them, and we're here for them. So here in the district attorney's office, I have 55 of the best investigators in the state of California, and they are independent of all law enforcement agencies. We operate completely under the umbrella of the district attorney's office. So they can call our hotline, and we'll immediately dispatch one of our detectives out there to interview and to ascertain the information and to see what we can do and build from there. We've already received, just from the publicity of this case, a report of a number of other things. So we're going to continue to build on that, and we want people to know that. That's why these victims deserve so much credit, because they were very courageous in coming forward and bringing forth this information. In the past, I don't know that that would have always happened, so I'm very proud of the investigators from my office. They worked this case relentlessly. They worked closely with these victims. We've assisted them with victim witness services to help the untreated trauma that they've experienced by being victims of this crime. So we're doing everything we can to lift them up and make sure their voice is heard and that healing occurs. And we do that for everybody, but particularly we want to do this in this case because it's a little bit additional trauma, because these are the people we call to help us. And when they respond and they harm us, it does hurt. And we understand that. We see it. But we can fix it by working together, building better infrastructures, having better policies and practices, and ensuring that individuals that are responsible, because as a law enforcement officer, you're entrusted with protecting the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights, the biggest protections we have, and in particular the 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment, your right to unreasonable search and seizure, your right to remain silent, your right to have counsel. These are critical backbones of the criminal justice system. And so we entrust with these officers. That's why we have them swear an oath to defend and protect the Constitution, because we need to know that these people that we're entrusting with this power and authority are not going to abuse it. And if on that rare occasion they do, we are going to bring them and hold them accountable. We are going to hold them accountable. And that's what we're doing today, is these are individuals who had that power, who had that authority, and used it to take from those in our community who are vulnerable, and that's not going to happen.
In the Blow case, there are 2 victims who are listed without any assault or sexual assault charges, solely as bribery victims. Who are those victims? Are those people who were in the police department who covered this up? Are those folks who knew what was going on outside of the department? Who are these 2 victims?
They were not people involved in the police department. So, all right, last one.
In both of these cases, do you have any reason to believe that each of them respectively is sort of a tip of something bigger within the departments, that there is a larger systemic issue in regards to the Blow case or to the Tran case?
We're going to look at everything. We're absolutely going to look at everything. We're going to look at if there are any additional, like I said, this weekend we received information of additional possibilities that we're going to be looking at. Getting this information out to the public brings it to light and gives people the courage to come forward. So if there are more, then we will take them on. In this administration, I have prosecuted a number of officers for sexual offenses. And we've been very successful in getting convictions or pleas on all of those cases. We haven't lost one of them. But we are starting to see a pattern here that is very alarming. This is not a position for you to profit from or to sexually exploit people. This is an honor and a privilege to be a law officer in our community. And like I said, 99.9% do it every day and do it well. But that less than 1%, we're going to always hold them accountable. And we're not going to apologize for it.
The additional possibilities this weekend, just to follow up of what you're looking into, is that connected to Blode and Tran, or are those completely separate officers who might be having issues?
Completely separate.
For Tran, how long has the district attorney's office been working or investigating?
We've been involved the last couple months.
How many months?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.